She was hidden behind my trailer, not chosen, not waiting, just trembling in the cold darkness like a shadow begging not to be seen. I didn't notice her at first. I only heard the faintest whisper leaking through the wind, so thin and cracked it barely sounded human. "Don't tell him I'm here." And in that moment before I even turned around, something inside my chest tightened. Fear has a temperature, and hers hit me like ice. I stepped around the corner of my rig slowly, boots sinking into gravel still warm from the road. The night was silent, too silent, the kind of silence that makes your heartbeat sound like a warning. She was crouched low against the steel of my trailer, her small frame shaking, her hands scraped and dirty. When her eyes met mine, they weren't just scared, they were pleading for a kind of safety the world had stolen from her. Her voice cracked again, barely loud enough for breath to carry it. "Please, please don't let him find me." I could see the terror vibrate through her shoulders. Whoever she was hiding from wasn't a shadow in her imagination. She had the look of someone who had already run farther than her legs should have allowed, someone who had been hunted long before she reached my truck. Diesel fumes curled in the cold air behind me, mixing with the metallic scent of fear clinging to her clothes. My hands hovered at my sides, unsure whether to reach out or move slowly enough not to scare her more. I wasn't prepared for what I saw next. Not the tears smeared across her face, not the bruises, not the way she whispered like the night itself would betray her if she spoke too loud. I crouched down, keeping my voice steady, calm, low. "You're safe for this moment, but I need to know. Who's looking for you?" She shook her head violently, pressing herself deeper against the metal like she wanted to melt into it. "If he finds me," she whispered, "I won't get away again." The way she said again tightened something deep inside my ribs. Before I could even speak another word, a distant sound cut through the silence, the slow crunch of footsteps across gravel. Heavy, deliberate, getting closer. The girl's breath hitched, her entire body stiffened, and the whisper that followed wasn't fear anymore. It was despair. "He's here." The girl's breathing hitched the moment I crouched beside her, like she thought even the sound of her own fear might give her away. She lifted her head just enough for me to see her eyes, wide, wet, terrified in a way that only someone who has been hunted understands. "Please," she whispered again, voice shaking like a loose bolt in a storm. "Don't let him find me." Those words burrowed into me with a weight I couldn't ignore. No trucker with a soul could. I positioned myself between her and the open lot, shielding her from the night like my body alone could hold back whatever monster she was running from. Her clothes were dirty, torn at the sleeve, dusted with gravel. She kept looking past me toward the dark stretch of highway as if expecting headlights to explode out of the shadows at any second. When I asked her name, she hesitated, then murmured, "Lena." Saying it seemed to make her smaller, like the world had punished her for existing. Something about the way she trembled made the cold around us feel sharper. The diesel scent was heavy in the air, mixing with the metallic tang of fear rising off her skin. I could feel her desperation like a pulse in the ground. She clutched the edge of my jacket, not begging for saving, begging not to be seen. I'd met frightened people before, but this wasn't ordinary fear. This was survival instinct hanging by a thread. A sudden gust of wind rattled a stack of old crates near the loading dock, and Lena flinched so hard she nearly fell backward. Her reaction wasn't normal, it wasn't random, it was conditioned. The kind of fear you learn when someone teaches you to expect pain every time something moves. My throat tightened as I realized just how close her pursuer had to be. "You don't run like this unless danger is steps behind you." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "Lena, tell me who's looking for you." She shook her head violently, eyes darting toward the gas station lot, as if even saying his name might summon him. Tears streaked her cheeks, but she didn't sob. She held her breath like someone who'd been punished for crying. "He said he'd drag me back," she whispered. "He said no one would help me." Her voice cracked on the last word, and something inside me cracked with it. Before I could say anything else, Lena suddenly grabbed my arm, fingers digging into my sleeve hard enough to hurt. Her eyes snapped toward the far side of the lot. Her whole body went rigid, breath stopping midair. "He's here," she choked out. "I know that sound." I listened, and then I heard it too. Gravel shifting beneath slow, deliberate footsteps. The neon sign buzzed overhead as I walked back toward the cab, but the sound felt distant, swallowed by the weight of whatever was lurking beyond the lot. When I opened the door, Lena was curled against the passenger seat, shaking so hard the vinyl trembled beneath her. Her eyes locked onto mine, wide and glassy, searching for any sign that I had seen something. Someone. I didn't want to scare her more, but lying wasn't an option. Not tonight. I climbed in slowly, placing a hand on the steering wheel to steady my breath before speaking. "Lena," I said softly, "I need you to tell me what happened before you found my truck." Her lips parted, but no words came out. Just a thin, broken exhale. She pressed the heel of her hand to her forehead like she was trying to push back memories too heavy to carry. I gave her a moment, the cab filled with nothing but the hum of the running lights. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely more than a whisper. "He followed us," she said. "Me and my mom. We tried to leave yesterday. We were supposed to make it to my aunt's house, but he found us on the highway." Her chin trembled. "He always finds us." The words hooked into the air like barbed wire. I felt them more than I heard them. This wasn't just fear. This was experience. I leaned closer, keeping my tone low and steady. "Where's your mom now?" The question shattered her. Tears spilled instantly, her hands flying to her mouth to stop a sob from escaping. She shook her head violently, as if saying it out loud would invite something terrible back into the world. My chest tightened. Whatever this girl had survived tonight wasn't over, not even close. She pointed toward the darkness behind my trailer, her fingers trembling so violently it hurt to watch. "He dragged her back there," she whispered. "I tried to help. I really did. But he pushed me away. He said," she swallowed hard, breath hitching. "He said if I screamed, he'd hurt her worse. So I ran. I didn't know where else to go." Her voice cracked at the edges. "I'm sorry." I shook my head immediately. "You don't ever need to apologize for surviving." Her eyes met mine again, scared, exhausted, but with a flicker of something underneath. Hope, maybe. The kind that only appears when someone finally believes you. Outside, the wind howled across the empty lot and the truck creaked softly as if the night itself were leaning closer. Something was out there, and Lena wasn't imagining it. She didn't speak at first. She just stared through the windshield like the night itself was crawling toward us. Her breathing came in sharp little bursts, each one sounding like it might shatter her ribs. When she finally whispered, her voice was paper thin. "His name is Clark." The way she said it told me everything. Fear wasn't just fear. It was memory. She held my jacket tight around her shoulders, knuckles white, lips trembling. "He said he'd follow me anywhere. He said even God couldn't hide me from him." She shook her head as if the words still echoed inside her. "I ran. I didn't look back. I just ran." Her fingers dug into the fabric like she was holding onto the last piece of safety she had left. I kept my eyes on her, letting her see she wasn't alone. The cab hummed softly around us, warm engine vibrating under our feet. But outside the world was frozen, empty, waiting. "You did the right thing," I said quietly. "You ran. You survived. That takes strength." She didn't react. Not at first, but her breath wavered like the truth was trying to push through years of someone else's lies. Then she flinched violently, eyes snapping toward the side mirror. "Did you hear that?" I listened. The wind shifted across the gravel, then faded. Nothing else. But fear this deep doesn't need sound. It invents ghosts just to stay alive. I reached over and lowered the interior light switch, letting the cab fall into a softer darkness. "You're safe inside this truck," I said. "No one's getting to you here." She squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He doesn't stop. He waited outside my job for hours. He followed me home. He watched me sleep." Her voice cracked, raw and shaking. "I thought the highway would save me. I thought if I got far enough." I leaned closer, lowering my voice until it matched the quiet terror in hers. "The highway brought you here," I said, "to someone who isn't afraid of him." Her eyes lifted slowly, searching my face for doubt. There wasn't any. Not tonight. Not with someone shaking this hard and whispering like the darkness had teeth. When I reached the back of the trailer, the night felt heavier than before, like the air itself was warning me to move slowly. The wind carried the faint rattle of a loose sign, but underneath that, I caught another sound. A low scrape. Rhythmic. Deliberate. Whoever was out there wasn't just hiding. He was closing in. My breath condensed in the cold, drifting upward like smoke from a slow-burning fuse. I knelt beside the rear tire and glanced underneath the trailer. Clara's fingers were trembling so hard she couldn't even grip the gravel. Her knees were pressed to her chest, her cheeks streaked with mud, her eyes locked on the direction she came from. The terror in her expression wasn't momentary. It was layered, old, the kind that grows roots in a person. "Is he here?" she mouthed silently. I nodded once, barely, keeping my movements calm. A faint silhouette appeared between the pumps, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the confidence of someone who believed he could take whatever he wanted. The neon lights flickered across his jacket, revealing just enough to know this wasn't a man running blindly. This was a man hunting. He scanned the lot slowly, like he was smelling the air. Then his gaze shifted toward my truck, and he started walking. I whispered to Clara to stay hidden and not move no matter what. She swallowed hard, her breath shaking like it might shatter her ribs. I stepped away from the trailer, boots crunching the gravel in a slow, controlled rhythm. My heart was steady, but the tension ran through me like a cold wire drawn too tight. I wasn't armed, but I had resolve, and sometimes that's sharper than anything you can hold in your hands. As he approached, he called out softly into the night, not like someone searching, but someone coaxing. "Clara, you know this is stupid. You're only making it worse." His voice was coated in something cold, something poisonous. He wasn't angry yet. He was confident, too confident, the kind of confidence a predator gains after years of not being stopped. I stepped into the open and let my shadow break the path of the light. He halted mid-step, the easy swagger slipping from his face. His eyes narrowed, studying me, trying to fit me into a story where he was in control. "Move," he said simply, as if I were a door he could just open. But this road had taught me one thing again and again. Some doors never open for men like him. The moment I pushed the door open again, the cold slammed into my face like a warning I was too late to hear. The parking lot felt different now, emptier, darker, as if the night itself had folded inward. I scanned the shadows around the back of my trailer, praying I'd find Lily exactly where I left her. But the space between the tires was empty. The gravel was disturbed, smeared with the imprint of her shoes. My chest tightened. She hadn't run. She'd been taken. A low rumble echoed from the far end of the lot. A vehicle idling with its lights off. My pulse spiked as I stepped forward, boots crunching through the cold silence. The fog hung low, hugging the ground like it wanted to hide the horror I was about to see. And then I spotted her, Lily, being dragged toward a rust-eaten sedan by a man whose face was twisted with rage and possession. She wasn't screaming. She didn't have the strength. She was just hanging on. He yanked her arm as if she were nothing more than an object he'd misplaced. Her feet scraped the gravel, her voice cracking into a pained whisper. I heard even from where I stood. "Please, stop." It shattered something inside me. Not anger, not fear. Something deeper, something old. The road teaches you many things, but the worst lesson is knowing how easily a person can disappear without anyone noticing. Not tonight, not under my watch. I started walking, fast at first, then faster, my breath fogging the air in sharp bursts. "Let her go," I shouted, my voice hitting the cold night like a hammer. The man snapped around, tightening his grip on her wrist. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, the kind of madness that grows in men who believe the world owes them obedience. "Back off," he snarled, dragging her closer to the open car door. "She's mine. She knows she is." Lily stumbled, tears streaking down her cheeks, her breathing ragged as she tried to keep her balance. She saw me coming, and her eyes widened, not in fear, but in hope. A silent plea, a spark of trust. It was all I needed. I kept moving, closing the distance between us as the man shoved her toward the car. "You don't get to keep running," he barked at her. "You're coming home. Now." I stepped into the vehicle's headlights, letting him see me fully. My fists clenched, jaw locked, heart thundering in a slow, steady rhythm of purpose. "She's not going anywhere with you," I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It just carried the truth like a blade. He froze for half a second, startled that someone had finally stepped out of the darkness to stop him. Then, with a twisted smile, he reached into his coat. He didn't pull the weapon fast. He pulled it like a man who had spent years believing no one would ever dare challenge him. Slow, intentionally, as if he wanted me to see it, to feel the threat drip through the air like poison. The handle of a switchblade glinted beneath the harsh beam of the headlights. Lily gasped, her knees buckling as he yanked her closer, pressing her back against the open car door. She looked so small beside him, so breakable, the kind of moment that makes the world go silent. I stepped closer, not with recklessness but with conviction. The cold dug into my skin, the wind slicing through my jacket, but all I felt was the heat boiling beneath my ribs. "Put the knife down," I said, my voice low, steady, anchored by a kind of calm that only comes when fear burns itself into resolve. The man laughed, short, bitter, humorless. "I said she's mine," he hissed. "Get out of my sight before I make you regret stepping in." Lily's fingers curled against the car door, trembling, desperate for something, anything to hold on to. Her voice quivered. "Please don't." It wasn't for him. It wasn't even for me. It was a plea to the night itself, begging the world to stop spinning long enough for her to breathe. I saw the bruise along her jaw, the fresh cut near her lip, the terror she'd been carrying long before she crawled behind my trailer. That was the moment the last bit of hesitation left me. I took one more step, boots grinding into the gravel. I wasn't shouting anymore. I wasn't pleading. I was simply there, unmovable, unshakable. "You're not taking her," I said. "Not now, not ever again." He stiffened, his eyes narrowing into slits of rage. Men like him don't know how to handle defiance. They don't understand resistance. They only understand obedience and silence. And Lily had gone silent years ago, until tonight. He lunged, not at me, but at her, a desperate attempt to seize control one last time. The knife flashed in the air, catching the light as he raised his arm. Lily flinched, covering her head with shaking hands. But before the blade could fall, I surged forward, grabbing his arm mid-swing. The impact jarred through both of us, his wrist twisting beneath my grip as he snarled in frustration. His surprise lasted only a second, but it was enough. I slammed his arm against the car frame, the knife clattering onto the gravel with a metallic scream. He swung his free hand at my jaw, wild and sloppy, but I didn't let go. I shoved him back hard, sending him stumbling into the dirt. Lily stumbled away from the door, her breath short, her eyes darting between us as if trying to decide whether she was safe or seconds from disaster. And then, the man pushed himself up again, shaking, furious, and refusing to let go of the only power he thought he had left. He slid backward across the pavement, boots scraping, breath tearing from his chest as he tried to force himself upright. The headlights carved a harsh white line across his face, revealing something that hadn't been there before. Fear, not fear of me. Fear of losing the one thing he still believed he controlled. Lily pressed herself against the side of my truck, one hand gripping the cold metal, the other covering her mouth as if afraid even her breathing might provoke him. Her eyes were wide, but for the first time, they weren't empty. They held a flicker of something fragile, belief that I wouldn't let him reach her again. The man staggered to his feet, clutching his ribs, rage boiling back to the surface. "You ruined everything," he spat, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You don't know what she is. You don't know what she's done." His voice cracked under the weight of the lie. I'd heard that sentence before, from men who break others and then blame the broken pieces, the kind of men who rewrite the truth until it serves them. Lily shook her head violently, tears spilling again. "I never did anything," she whispered. "I just wanted to leave." I stepped between them fully, blocking his view of her, grounding myself in the gravel like the road itself had fused with my bones. The cold stung my lungs. The silence pushed against my ears. The night waited. "She didn't ruin your life," I said. "You did. Every bruise, every threat, every time she begged for mercy. That was you, not her." His face twisted, the denial clawing at him like a fever. Men like him aren't afraid of fists. They're terrified of truth. He lunged again, but this time the motion was sloppy, desperate, drained of the confidence he'd worn like armor. I caught him by the jacket, forcing him back with the weight of someone who had spent years hauling everything the world could throw at him. He stumbled, almost falling, his palms slapping the hood of his car. Lily flinched at the sound, her shoulders curling inward. "You think you can protect her forever?" he shouted at me, breath heaving. "You'll leave. They always leave." Lily took a shaky step toward me, her voice barely a whisper. "Please don't let him take me." Her words didn't tremble, they cracked like something that had been held inside for far too long. I felt those words hit deeper than any blow he'd thrown. She wasn't asking for a hero. She was asking for one moment, one human moment, where someone didn't turn away, where someone didn't tell her to go back, where someone stood their ground. I took a breath that tasted like cold steel and diesel. "She's not going anywhere with you," I said again. But this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. A line drawn so sharply in the night that the world itself seemed to still around it. His face drained of color, and for the first time since the moment he stepped out of the shadows, I saw it, the moment he realized he had lost. The officers moved fast, cutting through the fog with practiced precision as they surrounded the rusted sedan. The man didn't fight at first, shock had pinned him still, but when one of the officers pulled his arms behind his back, he erupted into a frenzy of denial and rage. His voice cracked through the night like a tearing blade. "She's lying. She always lies. She belongs with me." The words spilled out in frantic waves, but no one listened anymore. Not even Lily. She stood beside me, shaking but standing. That alone was enough to unravel him completely. As they forced him into the patrol car, he turned his head toward her, desperation dripping from every breath. "You can't live without me," he screamed, the last gasp of a man who'd lost his grip on power. Lily flinched, but didn't look away. Instead, she took a tiny step closer to me, fingers brushing my sleeve, seeking reassurance, grounding herself. I nodded softly. She wasn't alone anymore. Not tonight. Not ever again, if I could help it. When the car door slammed shut, the sound echoed across the empty lot like a final verdict. For the first time since she whispered behind my trailer, the night didn't feel like it was hunting her. The fog lost its tension. The silence loosened. The shadows no longer seemed alive. Lily let out a shaky breath, almost collapsing from the weight of everything she'd carried for far too long. I caught her by the shoulders, steadying her as her knees trembled beneath her. "Is it over?" she whispered, her voice thin and exhausted. I looked toward the patrol car pulling away, red and blue lights flickering against the motel walls like a closing wound. "For tonight," I said gently, "but you don't have to face anything alone anymore. Not after this." Her eyes filled again, but not with fear this time. Something closer to relief, the kind that hurts, because it's been missing for too long. Another patrol car rolled up beside us, and an officer stepped out, a woman with calm eyes and a steady tone. She wrapped a blanket around Lily's shoulders, speaking in quiet, reassuring words, the kind meant for someone who's forgotten what safety feels like. Lily leaned into her, but kept a hand locked around my sleeve as if afraid I might vanish into the night, like everything else she'd ever trusted. "You the one who kept her safe?" the officer asked me. I nodded once. She gave me a small, sincere nod back. "You probably saved her life." I didn't respond. The truth was heavier than praise. The road had put Lily in my path for a reason, and I'd just done what any man with a heartbeat should have done. The officer guided her gently toward the warm back seat of the cruiser. Lily hesitated, turning back toward me, her trembling hand lifting just enough to wave. Not a goodbye, not fear, something closer to thanks. I raised my hand in return, watching as she climbed in and finally let herself rest. The door closed softly, and the night settled once more around my truck, quiet, cold, and honest. The highway swallowed the flashing lights until they became nothing more than faint glimmers dissolving into the black horizon. I stood there, alone beside my truck, feeling the cold settle into my bones and the weight of the night press down like a reminder that justice rarely arrives gently. The gravel beneath my boots was still disturbed from where Lily had been dragged, but now that same ground felt like a border she had finally crossed, out of fear and into freedom. And somehow, knowing she was safe made the silence feel different, softer, honest. I climbed into the cab and closed the door, letting the familiar scent of worn leather and diesel wrap around me. The seat still carried the warmth of her small frame, like a ghost of the fear she'd held onto for too long. I rested my hands on the steering wheel and exhaled slowly, letting the engine's soft hum settle the storm inside my chest. Nights like these leave marks. They always do, but they also remind you why you stop, why you listen, why you don't look away when someone whispers for help in the dark. As I pulled back onto the highway, the long stretch of asphalt felt different, almost reflective. The yellow lines gleamed beneath my headlights like threads pulling the night back together. I kept replaying the moment Lily looked at me from the patrol car window, exhausted, bruised, but no longer alone. Her eyes had carried something unfamiliar, something fragile but real. Hope, maybe not enough to rebuild everything at once, but enough to start, enough to breathe, enough to live long enough to choose her own direction. The road stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of cold air and quiet truths. I've seen a lot out here. Broken people, broken promises, broken nights. But every once in a while, the road gives you a chance to stitch something back together. And maybe that's why I keep driving, keep watching the shadows, keep answering the calls the world pretends not to hear. Because sometimes a stranger in a truck is the only wall between someone and the darkness chasing them. And I've learned that you can be tired, worn down, and still stand tall enough to make a difference. If you stayed with me through this story, then you understand why nights like this can't be forgotten, why someone needs to hear what really happens out here when the world stops watching, why stories like Lily's matter, not because they're easy to listen to, but because they remind us that courage sometimes comes in whispers, in tears, in trembling hands reaching out from behind a trailer hoping someone will answer. So if this meant something to you, if it made you feel or think or even just breathe a little deeper, then leave a like. It helps these voices reach the people who need them the most. And if you want to keep traveling with me through the dark miles ahead, subscribe to the channel. There are more stories on this road, more shadows hiding truths, more lives waiting for someone to stop. Ride with me. There's still a long road ahead.